This is Inside the UCC Group Leadership in Action podcast with your hosts Laura Butler and Jay Maymi. This podcast will share groundbreaking initiatives by the university and speak with leading educators, business leaders, and entrepreneurs that are paving the way for growth, transformation, and success.
Welcome to the UCC Group Leadership in Action podcast. I'm Laura Butler.
And I'm Jay Maymi, and we are the hosts of this fantastic podcast. And Laura, I've got to tell you something. The feedback that I'm hearing from our listeners and from staff and from those that are involved in participating in this podcast is that really our episodes have been outstanding. And I'm just excited about what the future holds for this podcast and its listeners.
I agree, Jay. I mean, there's a lot. It's for a new podcast. It's positive feedback. And there's a lot more that will come. I'm excited about our guest today, Mr. Arnaldo Brown, who is the Group Corporate Secretary, Group Legal Officer, Deputy CEO of Remax Elite, and the Chair of Remax Elite Board. He comes with years of experience and will share insight into the recent acquisition of Remax Elite by the UCC Group. So welcome, Mr. Brown. So good to have you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
I want to dive right into the goodness of what you have to say, Mr. Brown. But before we do that, because there's a lot to unwrap here in this particular episode, I'd like for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your story, a little bit about your journey.
I have been in law practice for 18 years. Well, this year, October, is my 19th year being called to the bar. I have been in public service. I have worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. I've been a member of Parliament. I'm presently a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, where I do business law and company law. And I'm here with the UCC Group in a capacity as a legal professional. And Laura would have spoken to some of the hats that I wear at UCC.
Yes.
Well, you certainly have an accomplished resume, and I wanted our listeners who may not be completely familiar with you to understand the man that you are and the accomplishments that you've made, because sometimes we can get lost in not only what we've done, but certainly the roots of who we are as a person and the achievements that we've made along the way speaks volumes of the person that's on air. So I didn't want our listeners not to see that and to recognize that in you. But I want to dive into this acquisition. What initiated the acquisition of Remax Elite by the UCC Group?
Well, UCC is more than a university, even though it is known primarily for its stellar performance in higher education, particularly in the private space here in Jamaica. And, Dr. Adams will tell you that it is the largest non-denominational private university in Jamaica, which is a fact. And it has accreditation from the University Council of Jamaica. As part of this diversity, it is in several areas of interest. We have, for instance, the Global Knowledge Process Solution Company, GKPS. We have Spectrum Capital Partners. We have the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean International Franchising, Inc., the UCC Foundation that is based in the United States. And we have recently UCC Real Estate Investment and Development Company. And of course, you know that UCC emerged from the acquisition of Institute of Management Sciences. So acquisitions are not really new to the university. In fact, it started out with an acquisition, and it has grown tremendously over the years, has sought to diversify. You saw the natural synergies that were emerging and the direction in which UCC was going. And it was accepted, and we entered the reference to acquire Marquee Holdings Limited, which is the holder of the franchise of Remax Elite in Kingston and Montego Bay, and the principals there are David Dixon and Richard Oliver, right? So that is essentially how we entered into this sphere, and you know, the rest they say is history, or I should say history in the making.
Yes. It sure is. It absolutely is.
And this is great information, Mr. Brown, for the public to hear, so they know that UCC is not just about higher education. There's far more to UCC and Dr. Adams' vision and the team that's coming together. So that's great information to share. Now, RE/MAX Elite is a part of the UCC group. What are the plans in place to take it to the next level? Because I know with you behind the scenes as well, it's going places. So tell us about that.
Sure. Well, there are several plans. Presently, RE/MAX Elite Jamaica, well, RE/MAX Elite, I should say, Kingston and Montego Bay is one of the largest, if not the largest, real estate brokerage operation in Jamaica. And our intent is to dominate the market space in Jamaica, but also to look for opportunities across the Caribbean and to make it a pan-Caribbean company. But before we get there, we want to strengthen its operation, bring in corporate governance structure. So we have already assembled a very accomplished board of directors, and our first meeting is scheduled for some time in the course of this month. One of the strengths of UCC is its ability to adapt and pivot in terms of the use of technology, because when the pandemic had set in, we had to shift from face-to-face to online. And I believe we have one of the more robust online learning and teaching systems available. And we're going to use that knowledge of technology and adaptation to enhance the technological infrastructure of RE/MAX Elite, both Kingston and Montego Bay. So you will see a greater presence. UCC has very strong credence in marketing and putting its brand out there. And we're going to bring that to bear on RE/MAX as well. And in addition to that, there is the plan in 2022 to go to the market via an IPO, which again will add value to the brand and to the brokers who are independent business owners in the RE/MAX family.
Yes, Mr. Brown, what a lot going on. I mean, very impressive. I have no doubt that the mission will be accomplished. Now, with the recent announcement of the UCC Caribbean Knowledge City plans, what role will RE/MAX play in that project? Because that was recently announced and to be located in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And it makes all the sense in the world, right? Because there's a lot of a real estate arm to it. So tell us about that.
Yes, and you know, that question triggers in my mind a question that was put to, I think, the principals of McDonald's, right? You know, people tend to have the idea that McDonald's was about primarily burgers. Right. And that is not entirely true, because when you think about it, location, they had some of the most prime real estate across the world. So in fact, they were more about real estate than burgers, right? and I say that to say that the acquisition of RE/MAX Elite is definitely very strategic, because when you talk about the Knowledge City, you're going to talk about accommodation. Students are going to need somewhere to live. Right. Faculty is going to need somewhere to live. Students who attend the university, and one of the beauty about the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean is that most of these students are what we would call mature students. So they are students who are working, they are employed, they have a paycheck, they have the ambition and the drive and the desire to own property. Yes. And if you have a captive market of 7,000 plus students, then clearly if you bring this entity into the family, then you have an ecosystem that you're creating, and persons are able to not only acquire degrees through the UCC group, but certainly if they are interested in first-time homeowners or even investment property, this is a one-stop shop for those persons.
Very much so. And the finance arm will come later as well. I have no doubt.
Definitely, because we spoke about Spectrum Finance, right? Spectrum Capital. And that again is another member of the group. There's a operation here in Jamaica, but it also has a base in St. Lucia. And the idea is to provide the capital that will be necessary. So if a student, for instance, is interested in a property, and let's say that they need financing, then when we are up to full throttle, Spectrum Capital will be there to provide that service to the student or to any member of staff and to the wider public.
Mr. Brown, these are very ambitious, broad-based plans that certainly have lots of possibilities of going in multiple directions. So I'm interested in what the chatter is in terms of the impact. What kind of impact do you believe and those that are part of this project believe that this acquisition and the current project will have on Jamaica, the Caribbean, and abroad?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that question, because in the context of a global pandemic that has had, negative impact on economies across the world, supply chain and distribution networks, one of the areas that has been performing at a very high level, certainly in Jamaica, is in the area of real estate. So the timing of this acquisition is actually very appropriate. And, real estate is one of those sectors that give you value over time. It tends to appreciate. Mm-hmm. Granted, you have circumstances that we have seen in the United States, for instance, when you had the fallout in the economy in 2008 and properties going underwater. But in the context of Jamaica, that is a rare, if ever, phenomenon that has ever happened. I'm not saying that it is not possible, but certainly in our experience, real estate goes in one direction, which is up.
Yes.
And the value proposition is I think, is self-evident. So from an impact on Jamaica itself, Jamaica is also underserved in terms of affordable housing. If you do the research, you will realize that we have a gap of anywhere between 15 to 20,000 housing solutions per year. So the bandwidth for growth is phenomenal. And apart from just being in the market as brokers, the companies such as Spectrum Capital and UCC Reed is hoping to also tap into that affordable housing space. So the reality is that what we're seeing here is a vertical and horizontal integration as a group that will impact the Jamaican economy, contribute to GDP, contribute to employment, contribute to wealth creation, contribute to development in a very positive way.
This is very exciting, Mr. Brown, especially being a Jamaican. Though I'm living in Texas, based here, I'm happy to hear this because this means so much for Jamaica on a whole and its people and the partners and globally as well with what you're offering to the public. So that's excellent. With your experience, Mr. Brown, what nuggets of wisdom can you share about achieving success, not only in real estate, but in business? Just like a final little, bit of advice for listeners.
Well, I believe timing is everything. There's always an opportunity in a crisis that may sound cliche, but the reality it is true. because again, here we are in the midst of a pandemic, but our outlook is expansive. It's not contractionary, it's not reactionary. The pandemic will not last forever. And even though there are economic activities that have been negatively affected by the pandemic, there are activities that have benefited from the pandemic. And real estate is but one of them. There's been an explosion of personal service operations, whether it is delivery or online shopping, so the digital economy has taken a significant boost during this period. So the point is that even in very challenging times, there always is a silver lining. So in every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. And I believe that Max Elite is our silver lining. Very
much so. So you're saying keep the faith, keep soldiering on, doing what you need to do, be informed, be prepared. Timing is everything.
Yes.
Absolutely. In our last minute here, give us an example or give us sort of a vision of what the next 3 to 5 years will look like for UCC Global, for the Caribbean Knowledge City, for all the plans that are right now in the early stages of development. What's it going to look like? What can people expect in the next 3, 5, and 10 years?
Well, that's a very excellent question, and you touched on a term there, global, because part of the UCC Group is UCC Global, which is a new branch that has been created in terms of offering our education products, not only in Jamaica, but globally to students anywhere in the world, whether online or in person. And that is really what we're creating. We're creating a university for the future so that a student in, say, the United States or in Canada or in Europe or in Afghanistan, if they want to get onto our global platform and have access to first world, first rate quality education, because we have partnered with the University of Arizona to deliver various courses to any student anywhere, they can do so. And when we have constructed the Knowledge City, which will have accommodation for students, if they so desire to come and to enjoy the warmth of Jamaica, the atmosphere, the warmth of the people, the very beautiful landscape and our white sands and so on, while studying and earning a degree, they can also do that. So the future is extremely bright for the UCC Group, and I believe that we have the team that is necessary to bring these things to fruition.
Well, Mr. Brown, I really appreciate you taking time to spend with us today on our podcast. There's no question in my mind that the future is very bright. Jamaica is on the cutting edge of doing something that I believe has a strong future to it. It's going to empower the lives of a lot of people. You're there, and I'm excited to see what the next 3 to 5 years will look like. So I appreciate you being on the show and looking forward to having you back in the future with an update.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure being on.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Laura, there's no doubt in my mind that Jamaica is on the move.
UCC Group is also on the move. Yes, very much, Jay. That was a very exciting interview. A lot of information, great things happening for Jamaica, and I'm excited about that. Want to wish everyone, our listeners, a very happy new year. Our next episode will be in January 2022. I pray that it's a better year for us all and that you'll continue to take care of yourselves and each other and just, hold on to the good and the positives and keep having a heart of gratitude.
Well, Laura, and that being said, I want to encourage our listeners to make sure that they track our prior episodes. They can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Podcast Addict, and of course, ucc.edu.jm.
And thank you all for listening. Keep safe and focused. Until next time, I'm Laura Butler.
And I'm Jay Maymi, your co-host for the UCC Group Leadership in Action podcast.